Hi, welcome to the Fit and Healthy Today show. Today we're talking about a subject that's near and dear to my heart and probably to about 50% of Americans that are age 40 and over. Acid reflux as well as the hiatal hernia. What are these? Okay. What happens is when you get food matter that's sitting in here in an undigested form, the body excretes stomach acids and things to break down the food. What happens is if you don't have good digestion and some of these other causes we'll talk about, the food and the acids splash up into the esophagus, and actually literally you can get what feels like burning in the back of the throat, and it causes heartburn, chest pains, belching. Literally there have been people that have gone to the hospital that say, I think I'm having a heart attack, when they're having acid reflux, because it gives that similar type of a chest pain. Hiatal hernia, like I said, 50% of Americans over the age of 40 suffer to some extent of a hiatal hernia. Literally, as I mentioned on here, part of the stomach protrudes through the opening of the diaphragm and into the chest cavity, and we have these little rings around our that allow food to go into our stomach, and when we're eating, they open and they say, okay, we're going to let this food come in here, and when we're all done eating, there's a message sent to the brain to contract these muscular rings and hold the food inside the stomach, and then it churns and does whatever else it has to do, enzymes and all of that. And it's not supposed to be coming back up through these rings. But problem lies that if we have a poor diet, junk food, oh my gosh, especially things like burgers and fries and foods that actually can take a long time to digest, that are not enzyme rich, and the lack of enzyme-rich foods. This food kind of just sits in there and it rots, and then the body kind of relaxes these muscular rings, and the food comes back up again. Or over a period of time, from the food sitting in the stomach so long, it can kind of eat away these areas. In addition, if we got the big old gut in front of us, guess what? It pushes it up, Or if we overeat, it pushes it up. So, we'll talk about ways that we can reduce that, but obviously if you've got the poor diet, you've got that extra weight going on there, and then there are genetic tendencies. Some of us, like my mother, has a hiatal hernia, and I have tendencies, and when I was pregnant, oh my gosh, it was burning all the time, and I could feel it, and so I kind of know, I do enzymes and some other things we'll talk about so that I don't have those issues anymore without taking the drugs, which lend themselves to their own side effects. Gallbladder malfunctioning or gallbladder stones. When we don't get adequate amounts of bile excretion to help digest proteins and fats, the food sits there and rots as well and can come back up. The key is we want enzymes, proper pancreatic enzymes, proper digestive enzymes, proper stomach acid secretions for the foods that we're eating in order to break the food down so it evacuates out of the stomach and goes to the small intestines. Like I said, if it sits there and kind of rots away, boom, it can come back up again. Stress, when you're stressed out, basically when you have stress, your body spares its enzymes for you dealing with that fight or flight. So good luck. When you're under a lot of stress for a lengthy period of time, you're not going to have enzymes to break your food down, and it's just going to sit there and rot and come back up again. Traumas to the stomach area, I know, especially among young boys, including my own sons, they like to hit each other all the time, and stomach area and that type of thing, which can literally contribute or cause those little hernias to develop and have that protruding in the chest cavity. Inflammatory issues or food allergies can also cause the area, these rings, to become inflamed and protrude as well. When we're talking about diet and the best things to eat in order to lessen the symptoms of acid reflux, there is a theory, eat right for your blood type is what the book is called, and I found it to be probably about 70 to 80% accurate. Not for everybody, but we tend to notice among certain blood types that, like O blood types, tend to be able to digest proteins and meats and those types of things. But you throw a steak on my A blood type stomach, it sits there. I have to take additional amounts of enzymes to help break it down. My body apparently just wasn't geared genetically to break down those types of meats. So you need to be observant of the type of foods that you have a difficult time digesting, and you avoid them, or you take additional amounts of enzymes or supplementation to help you break those foods down. The best diet for people who have acid reflux are to look for foods that are enzyme rich, unrefined types of foods. So you're talking about your fruits and your vegetables, your whole grains, your nuts which are also very anti-inflammatory. Drinking 2 glasses of water every 2 waking hours. Now, when you drink water, obviously it can dilute some of these stomach acids that you may be putting out because of stress or whatever reason. And so you can help just by drinking those couple glasses of water alone to keep that from coming back up again as well. Cabbage juice. I've looked high and low for cabbage juice, and it's very, very hard to find. So unless you have a juicer, it's difficult to find it or locate it. But cabbage juice has been around for centuries used, and old sauerkraut is actually what they used to use in Europe to heal stomach ulcers and to get that reflux, calm that down a bit. Avoid overeating. We talked about that already, because you fill that stomach up, I guess it's going to overflow, and where's it going to go? It's going to go back up again as the stomach is churning. Avoid hard to digest foods, as we mentioned before. Keep track of the things that you know you have a problem with. And caffeine, alcohol, chocolate, and spicy foods, oh mama, you're going to have a problem with those if you have acid reflux or a hiatal hernia, because they're pretty acidic and irritating to the stomach, and that burn on the way back up. So if you have a problem with those, don't do them. We are going to move on to supplements that I know from a personal standpoint, as well as what my customers use, all researched with double-blind placebo studies, every single one of them, some of which I'll mention the studies are on. The most effective thing that I've seen, double-blind placebo studies, to help heal esophageal, lessen that burning, diglyceride licorice. I abbreviated it, called DGL. 400 or 500 milligrams 3 times a day, empty stomach, 20 minutes before meals, was as effective as Tagamet, and that's a stomach acid suppressor for healing ulcers. But in addition, the diglyceride licorice helps heal the linings, the mucosal linings and the layers in the stomach and the esophageal. Whoa, it also is utilized actually for inflammatory bladder issues too, because these are all expandable, very high epithelial cells, collagen type cells, and that is very healing on those types of cells, diglyceride licorice. Enzymes. If there's certain foods that you have a problem digesting, or you're under a lot of stress, or you have no gallbladder, despite what a lot of doctors say, enzymes do help break your food down. They digest the foods for me. If I eat beef, I'm going to take something called super enzymes. It has a little bit of extra betaine hydrochloride, stomach acids, and some pancreatic enzymes to help break down that meat that I don't seem to digest very well. Most acid reflux that I see people come in with they're not because of acids. I mean, people know from the time they're small kids on upward if they've got true stomach acid problems. If they don't, obviously, then we got to look at other issues, such as enzymes, if they don't have a gallbladder, and all those other things that I discussed earlier, and try to alleviate those first instead of throwing people on drugs. Now, these drugs, they come with side effects, especially if you're a menopausal woman or you're a frail bone person. They found that these protonics, if taken at least for, I think the studies were 3 years, 44% increase in hip fractures. So, boy oh boy, if you got a bone density problem, you absolutely do not do those acid reducers or any of the types of those drugs, because it blocks the calcium, magnesium, and mineral absorption. It also causes blood pressure issues. I mean, the list goes on. Research it for yourself. But I got to tell you, try everything else. Those are only last resort. Okay? Aloe vera juice. Aloe, once again, been around for centuries. A lot of empirical data on that one. Promotes healing and soothes digestion, and it can also help with constipation as well. But very soothing. I have a 23-year-old son that gets a lot of these kind of issues, and the aloe, he'll do an aloe brand called, it's George's, but because it doesn't have much taste. But he'll sit there and do that, and it just soothes that stomach, stops that burning down. Nux vomica, particularly, that's a homeopathic remedy that you let absorb and soak under the tongue. Nux vomica is very effective for stress-induced acid reflux. And you'll take 3 or 4 of those 30C tabs under the tongue, and boy, I'll tell you, it works, it works, it works. So I always ask some questions. My customers usually come in with an idea of what they want, but I'll ask a few questions to kind of steer them in the right direction. And Nux vomica, a lot of good studies on that and very helpful for stress-induced. Slippery elm. Now, I'm a singer and I sing, and we've used slippery elm for a lot of years in order to, when we over-sing or we sing a lot, the slippery elm will really, really help soothe our vocal cords, those very expandable tissues. Well, slippery elm also helps the expandable tissues in the esophagus and the stomach. So, chewable or in a tincture form, you can get it. It's an herbal tincture. You can put in water or take it outright. Will help heal that. Marshmallow root, been around for long, once again, centuries again. Tea or 3 milliliters, which would probably be about a half a teaspoon of the tincture, soothes and reduces inflammation of the esophageal and stomach area as well, because we can get burning. Aloe helps. We can heal the lining, but sometimes we get inflammation as well, and it can be helpful. Probiotics. Those are the good bacteria that the body uses to help fight off infections, help with, oh my God, serotonin levels, everything. But they help fight off what is called H. pylori bacteria. And H. pylori is a type of bacteria that eats away the stomach lining. So if you have a propensity towards that and have ulcers, probiotics, 4 billion at least per day on an empty stomach, can help keep those good bacteria up so the bad bacteria don't flourish. Super green drinks, neutralizing acidity. Okay, when we're talking about diet, and we've talked about the diet so much, alkaline your diet and keeping it in a non-acidic fashion helps so much with stomach issues, helps with energy, helps with, the list goes on and on. But if you alkali, and I know some of these super green types of drinks can alkali the blood, they give you energy, but they also can reduce that acid reflux. Liquid calcium, magnesium. Now mind you now, if you're doing Tagamet or the acid protonics, you're not going to absorb this. But your body, in order to be able to properly constrict and relax these, this little muscle ring here, and including the rest of your vascular system and your other muscles in your body, it requires calcium, magnesium. And so what the suggestion is probably about 1,000 milligrams, 500 milligram ratio, divided dosages twice a day. It relaxes those, that little muscle, and so that it can properly just let the food stay inside of there and it doesn't tighten and constrict. There are, as we mentioned before, emotional triggers for acid reflux, and there is a branch of, I would call it medicine out there, called flower essence medicines, Bach flower essences, and there are other brands as well too. Bach's just been around for, I think, 60, 70 years, long time, longer than most medications. And there's certain, you can look it up online, or there's certain symptoms that accompany certain things that can release or reduce emotional triggers, and the Bach flower essences can be very helpful for that. Chiropractic, osteopath, or naturopathic doctors are taught. Now, usually within 2 or 3 treatments, and I usually tell people to go see, you know, one of our local, we've got a lot of good local chiropractors. I know my son goes to Dr. Gene Pritchett, and what happens is they can press down here and get that hernia to kind of go back in again, and they can teach you how to do it. And considering 50% of people over age 40 have some degrees of a hiatal hernia, we get that pushed back in so that the muscles can constrict and close properly, or constrict and expand properly. Very gentle, very mild, non-painful to do so, and like I said, within a few treatments. There are other things to consider when you have acid reflux. If you lay flat in your bed and you have acid reflux, I know when I was pregnant, burn, 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 burn. You gotta sit in a little bit of an, or not sit, but lay down with a little bit of an incline. A couple of pillows behind you to raise you up a little bit, or if you've got one of those expensive beds that can tilt you up a little bit, that can keep that flow from happening when you lay down. Smoking really stimulates acid reflux, and the nicotine combinations just cause that to get really acidic. In addition, smoking causes the body to become acidic as well. Lose weight if you're obese. And I know everybody says, Heike, that's easier said than done. But if this is a problem that bothers you a lot, you'll lose the weight. Because seriously, this stomach acids, if you do have this issue and you do nothing about it, which absolutely the doctors are right, you should do something about it, you need to drop the weight. Otherwise, you can develop esophageal or stomach cancers, because this does burn away these linings, and if you don't have good nutrition, these linings don't repair themselves and the cells will mutate and become precancer or cancerous. So you have to address this issue. I'm of the opinion not with medications, and there are other means you should always try first, as I discussed earlier. I think when you're evaluating and when you go into your healthcare professional and you start to talk about this acid reflux issue, a lot of questions should be asked. There's certain testings, hormonal testings, enzyme testings, liver function testings, pancreatic. I think those are all issues that you should discuss with your doctor as well in order to get the testing that could diagnose maybe a potential issue. There are scoping procedures where they can check and see what kind of damage has occurred. Once again, don't ignore this issue. It can turn into something bigger. Anyway, next we're going to be moving on. I'm going to show you a couple of reflexology exercises and a couple a pressure point that can help you with this acid reflux. Thank you.